If you watched Love is Blind, you're probably very familiar with Lauren, Cameron, Amber, Jessica, Barnett, and the whole crew that made it past the pods and into real life as engaged couples. But the 6 duos that were featured on the show weren't the only ones to ask the question, is love truly blind? In this video, we're going to be talking about what went down with the Untold engagements, and why they were left off camera. So if you watched the show, you know how it worked. Singles enter these pods, get to know random strangers based solely on their personality, and then decide if they want to get engaged sight unseen. You also probably remember that there were actually quite a lot of people participating in the experiment. People who seemed to get passed over because the show's focus was elsewhere with the more successful relationships. People like John here. Remember him?
If I had to guess, I'd say you're African American.
Or do you remember these two?
So what are you looking for in a woman?
In shape and beautiful.
Aw, that doesn't sound shallow at all.
Remember Lily Mae? Or how about Brianna, who really only had one non-negotiable when it comes to dating?
Turn offs? Oh my god. I hate being able to hear people breathe.
But these aren't the stories we're going to be focusing on, because there were 2 couples that went through the whole process just like Damien and Giannina or Lauren and Cameron. Couples who developed their relationship in the pods enough to actually get engaged, and even someone who was left with a difficult decision between 2 people. Not unlike what went down with Barnett, Amber, and LC. In the final edit of the show, we really only got a few short glimpses of these people. But the first 2 I'll be talking about is Lexie and Westley. So Lexie doesn't really make much of an appearance at all on the show, other than a few times in the background here and there. Pretty much this is her line of the show.
This has made me so open, I feel like.
Yep, that's about it, with 1 or 2 exceptions. But Westley, you might remember him as the one who mentions this.
I'm short, and there are women out there that won't date guys that are shorter. Wesley.
Turns out, these 2 were actually a pretty solid duo all the way through the pod dating process. Apparently, it took only 4 days for Lexie to decide that Westley was it. Now, if you're unfamiliar, each Love is Blind pod member would date every single contestant of the opposite sex, all 15 of them. Then, after the first few dates, the producers would ask them who their favorites were, and from that list, dwindle it down to just 8 people, and the dates with them would get longer. So yeah, 4 days in, Lexie was pretty dead set on Westley early, and it wasn't much different for Westley. So, he decided to propose to Lexie on day 10, decorating the pod with flowers, cheese, and wine.
I love that.
But when the 2 went out for their reveal, something we get a few glimpses of in the previews, the producers told them they weren't going to be moving on to the honeymoon phase of the show. So, their journey ended right there. But they did decide to leave the show together. As for what happened next, well, Westley did an interview with Cosmo where he talks more about it.
No, Lexie and I are not still together. We split up a few months after the show, and I ended up moving to Asia for some time.
Apparently, though, the 2 are still great friends and talk a lot. Which leaves our second mystery couple, and this story revolves around 3 people from the show. These people are Danielle, Matt, who gets a few moments of speaking time in the very early stages of the show.
When I heard about this experiment, I knew it was for me. It was the opposite of what modern dating has become.
And a man who actually got quite a bit of screen time in the final edits, Rory. You might remember Rory as the guy often seen giving advice to the other men in the pod.
Tell her what's going on, break down, be emotional, and give it everything you've got, because the pain of knowing you didn't give it all and you never know the answer is terrible, and you should avoid that at all costs.
Now, apparently, Danielle seriously dated both Matt and Rory in the pods, but it was Rory who was the frontrunner all through the process. Eventually, Rory got down on one knee, and the 2 were engaged, while Matt left the show. According to an interview with Danielle, Matt said he wasn't quite ready for marriage, and he asked Danielle to leave with him unengaged, saying, "Matt told me he didn't feel comfortable getting married this soon and wanted to experience life with me first. He said that he wanted to go on trips with me and go through all the senses together. He wanted to actually hold my hand and tell me he loved me before we were forced into something." But Danielle told Matt that she still wanted to have her final date with Rory. And Rory, on the other hand, was ready for marriage. So the 2 got engaged, and we can even see footage from the previews of them seeing each other for the first time, with Danielle up front here and Rory viewable in the background. So Rory and Danielle left the show engaged and attempted to continue their romance off camera. But unfortunately, that didn't last too long, as Danielle still had unresolved feelings for Matt. And Danielle talks about the experience like this. After moving out of the pods, the two grew distant as she didn't see much of Rory because of work. Things felt like it moved too fast, so they split. Then Matt came back into her life. Now, Matt had apparently been contacting her this whole time. Quote, Matt found my social media, he found my emails and started contacting me. Meanwhile, I'm still at the facility, but he sent me some emails and messages on Instagram. He liked some very special photos that were tied to conversations and memories that we had had together in the pods. Kind of like a little secret code. And while her and Rory split, Danielle and Matt came together. Unfortunately though, just like everything else, this didn't last very long either, as Matt wanted to have an open relationship and he was planning a trip to Paris with another woman. Nice. Now today, everything with the three is actually fine. They're all on good terms, apparently even doing yoga together. But the one question remaining is, after all of this, the pod dating, getting engaged, why were these couples let go? Why were they denied their honeymoon getaway in Mexico that the other couples got? Simply put, the producers didn't expect the show to do so well. According to production, when the filming began, they were nervous no one would get engaged, hoping for maybe 1 or 2 couples to follow after the pod experiment was over. When 8 eventually got engaged, they realized they simply didn't have the space. And it wasn't a matter of not booking enough hotel rooms in Mexico, they didn't think they could fit that many storylines into a season. So, 2 couples got the boot, and it was Lexie and Westley, and Rory and Danielle. The untold engagements of Love is Blind. So that's it for this video on Love is Blind, the untold engagements. Hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to like and subscribe if you did. I'll be continuing our Let's Watch next week after the usual Listen to Your Heart content. But I thought this would be a good story to tell now that we've left the pods. So until next time, Bachelor Fantake, out.
Turn offs? Oh my God. I hate being able to hear people breathe.